Okay, with this experiment we've got lead nitrate and sodium sulfate, so this should trigger off something at the moment to think, I wonder if this is a precipitation reaction. So for precipitation, let's go straight to the solubility, looking at lead nitrate and sodium sulfate. So nitrates, they're all soluble, so that means our lead nitrate, that really can be soluble. And while we're here, let's just be thinking, lead forms 2+ ion, and nitrate forms 1-. So this wants to give 2 electrons, and nitrate wants to receive 1 electron. So that means we need 2 nitrates to make 1 lead happy. So remember 2 brackets and 2, that means there are 2 nitrates and 1 lead. Okay, so lead nitrate, and what was the other one? Sodium sulfate. So let's have a look. Sodium sulfate, all soluble except barium and lead sulfate. Okay, so one of the possibilities, if we've got lead nitrate and sodium sulfate, is that we could end up with lead sulfate, and lead sulfate is not soluble, it's insoluble. So this looks like a precipitation reaction. Let's just have a quick look again while we're here about the sodium sulfate formula. Sodium forms a +1 ion, so that gives 1 electron, and sulfate forms a 2-, a 2- ion. So we're going to need 2 sodiums for 1 sulfate. So our formula for sodium sulfate is going to look like this: 2 sodium, 1 sulfate. So let's come back to this. Name the reactants: lead nitrate and sodium sulfate. And predict the products. Now we've predicted that we're going to get lead sulfate as a precipitate. So let's write that down, shall we? We think we're going to get lead sulfate because, again, what do we know about lead sulfate? Lead sulfate, all sulfates are soluble except lead sulfate. So we think we're going to get lead sulfate, which will leave us then with, what will we be left with? Sodium nitrate. So let's have that then, shall we? Plus sodium nitrate. So then again, let's look at the video. Here's our video, and we'll see that we started out with a clear solution of sodium sulfate, and a kind of a milky whitish lead nitrate. So let's describe what happened. A clear solution of sodium sulfate. Actually, that's probably back to front, isn't it? Let's write it the other way. Let's write a milky white solution of lead nitrate was added to a clear solution of sodium sulfate. Immediately, what happened. Immediately cloudy white precipitate formed, which sank to the bottom of the solution, leaving a clear solution above. Okay, and the name of the reaction, of course, precipitation. Do make sure you write neater in the exam than I've been able to write on my computer here. So a word equation, lead nitrate plus sodium sulfate, and again remember we use a positive sign there and an arrow there, forms lead sulfate precipitate plus sodium nitrate. So let's then work out our equation. Lead nitrate, let's go back to where we were before. Lead, it forms a 2 positive ion, and nitrate 1 negative ion, so we need 2 nitrates for 1 lead. So our formula PbNO3, we need 2 nitrates plus sodium sulfate. Again, sodium forms a plus 1 ion, sulfate negative 2, so we need 2 sodiums for each sulfate. So that will give us Na2SO4, reacts together to form, don't forget to use the arrow, lead sulfate plus sodium nitrate. Let's have a look then, what would be the formula for lead sulfate? Lead forms positive 2 ions, sulfate negative 2, so we need 1 of each. So 1 of each, that's what we've got. So that's the balanced formula for lead sulfate. And sodium nitrate, sodium forms plus 1 ions, nitrate negative 1, so we need 1 of each. So we've got that 1 sodium, 2 nitrate, that's 1 of each, so that's good. Now let's see, we've got 2 nitrates over here, and we've got 1 over here, so we need 2 nitrates, and we've got to put it in front. We can't put it down here, because that would mean we've got 1 sodium to 2 nitrates, which is a mistake. So let's get rid of that. So the nitrates are balanced. We've got 2 sodiums over here and 2 sodiums over here. So nitrates are balanced and sodiums are balanced. We've got 1 sulfate in the products and 1 in the reactants. So sulfates are balanced. 1 lead in the products, 1 lead in the reactants. So that's balanced as well. So there is our balanced symbol equation. So now we will have to write this evaluation of a precipitation reaction. We'll have to do 2 evaluations, and 1 has to be this precipitation. So here it is. When the 2 solutions, lead nitrate, and sodium sulfate, again, write neatly, neater than this, were mixed, a white solid form. This is a precipitation reaction because 2 ionic solutions were mixed together in a solid form. Remember, 2 ionic solutions mixed together form a solid. General equation, this is AB plus CD gives AD plus CB. So that means there's a swap going on in there, which shows the cation and anionic ion of the 2 ionic compounds swap. One of the new ionic compounds it forms is a solid. In this reaction, the same thing occurred with lead nitrate plus sodium sulfate reacts together to form lead sulfate plus sodium nitrate. The precipitate was sodium, not sodium, concentrate was lead sulfate, because based on the solubility rules, and you'll want to quote that, the solubility rules, you want to quote that, because of the solubility rules, where are we? Because of the solubility rules, all sulfates are soluble except barium sulfate and lead sulfate and one of the other sulfates, calcium sulfate. In regards to the observations, the clear solution was sodium sulfate, and the milky white solution was lead nitrate. After the solutions mix together, the white solid precipitate was lead sulfate, and the solution was sodium sulfate, nitrate, because let's go back for a second, and the solution was clear. Got to read it carefully. And the solution was clear because sodium nitrate is a clear solution. Now, so we started out with these ions, lead ions and nitrate ions, sodium ions and sulfate ions. So the lead sulfate became a precipitate. So what were the spectator ions? What ions were left? The ions that were left were clearly nitrate ions and sodium ions. These ones are just left floating around as spectators in the solution. So the spectator ions are sodium and nitrate. And that is the end of that. Done.